What's up, everybody? This is another episode of the Reuben Show, right? We're daily, right? We're chugging right along. We're on vacation. We're on the move. We're talking. We're on Slauson Avenue. We're parked on the side here. I think we're right next to a library, right? But anyways, we do this because we put a show out every single day. And again, I live my life. We did some exercise today. I did a solid 2 miles at Leg Lake. It was fun, interesting. But anyways, let like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But anyways, let's get right into the first topic. I rambled. This 40 something seconds in. And anyways, so let's talk about the Los Angeles Lakers win the in-season tournament. They win the in-season tournament for basketball, and it was great and everything. But here's the only angle I want to talk about, and I'm going to leave this subject alone, right? We're going to talk about some other stuff, but we're going to leave this subject alone. And after I make this point, this one point, right? Why don't they make the stakes a little bit higher? You see what they were doing. You see how it's kind of cool that they're going with this in-season tournament. Why don't they make it? Here's my suggestion. You guys tell me what you think. The winner of the in-season tournament should get a lottery pick. They should get the lottery pick, but they can't get the first 5 picks, but they can put their name in the hat for picks 6 through 13 or whatever the lottery pick is. They get their name, regardless of their record, they get their name put in for that. They can't get 1 through 5 or 1 through 6, but they could get 7 through 13 or 7 through 10, whatever it is. That, and you make the in-season tournament a lot longer. At first, I thought this was pointless. It didn't work. But now, if you really think about it, you could up the stakes and you can make it way more interesting. And you can get people to tune in if you make it where it's like, okay, the winner of this gets their name put into the lottery mix, and you can now, possibly get a lottery pick. Even if you win a bunch of games, even if you win the NBA championship, it still incentivizes a lot of teams to play really good, and you make the in-season tournament last all the way to the new year. You make it longer, where you make more of these games matter, and you have a bigger thing, so that now that January, the in-season tournament winner is announced, and now this person has, and so what you can do is you can trade that lottery pick. You can manipulate it, you can do things with it, so it'll incentivize teams to really play hard at the beginning. It'll give everybody the incentive, so forth and so on. It'll be pretty cool, pretty fun, right? So anyways, that's the deal with that. So I think that's something to do there. The NBA's onto something. I wasn't really a fan of it, and I kind of got converted because of what I saw. And then the result of it is like, oh yeah, what if you just up the stakes a little bit? You up the stakes a little bit, you make it a little bit more interesting, and you put everybody in the driver's seat. Not everybody in the driver's seat, I shouldn't say that, but you make the stakes higher, and you make it last a little bit longer. It's a little bit stretched out, and you make it so that they get a lottery pick 6 through 12 or 6 through 13, and they can trade that, they can manipulate that, they can use that as things. So it incentivizes people to be good. And it also puts kind of a possibility that, you can keep a good team good, and you can, dish out the trades, so it gives another person in the lottery. I don't know. It's just more opportunity. So that's my thoughts about that. Right. So anyways, there it is. Right. So another thing too, that was interesting in sports, right, is this whole UFC thing where you have, slash boxing, right? Francis Ngannou, champion of the UFC, has the contract negotiation. He has so many fight deals. He fights his last deal out. He leaves the UFC where they made him a champion. They made him a winner. They made him interesting. They do all that kind of stuff, right? And then, what does he do? He leaves and he does this big old boxing match with Tyson Fury. And then he does all that, which is fine, right? That's great and everything. But just like I've talked about before, who is he going to fight that's interesting? Right? He can't keep fighting boxers because let's talk about this fight. But and there's 2 prongs to this. This might be the rest of the podcast, but this is an interesting dynamic of boxing, right? Is Francis Ngannou didn't have any fights under his belt. He's an accomplished UFC fighter, so he is a fighter, right? He understands all this. The limelight, his personality is growing by the day. He's figuring it out. He's doing well, but he really does have any opponents that his dance partners almost don't exist for him because he signed with this other league that doesn't really have any quality heavyweights. It doesn't have any quality heavyweights. It really doesn't. And that is an issue. I don't care what anybody says. I shouldn't say it that way, but I don't care what anybody says. And you think that this is not going to be an issue because you throw all this money at him, and then he can be a boxer and he can be a fighter, a MMA fighter, and all this other stuff. But where's his fight? Where's his fight that's going to be interesting? That's going to say I want to watch it, right? If you juxtaposition with the fight that got canceled because of injury with John Jones versus Stipe Miocic, those are two game proven champions slash dancing partners. It's a good blend. You're going to sell a bunch of pay-per-views. You're going to, the fighters are going to do well for themselves. It's going to be an interesting fight. There's a lot on the line. Top level versus top level. You're not going to see Francis Ngannou do that for 5 years, maybe, if at all. If at any more, his career is going to be over. He's too old. And I think all the best fights are in boxing for him because all the heavyweight fighters, most of the heavyweight fighters are in the UFC that are interesting, that are prize fighters. Francis Ngannou is a prize fight level fighter. And when you say, Reuben, what does it matter if he's a great champion? No, wrong. You got to have a personality. You got to be able to deal with the media. You got to be able to have charisma, pizzazz. You got to be able to deal with the pressure, the limelight. And you got to win and perform and be in top shape and so forth and so on. Ask Conor McGregor what that's like. You don't even necessarily have to win all the fights. You don't have to win all the fights. But a prize fighter is entertaining, and he's involved, and he's present. And who are you? And when you have, okay, so this is what makes a mega fight. A mega fight in pugilistic sports, in boxing and MMA, is when you have two champions. You have two champions that have those qualities. When they fight, that's a mega fight. That's millions of pay-per-views. Everybody has a giant payday. Mayweather, Pacquiao, De La Hoya, Mayweather. You can go down the list. Well, Canelo didn't really have a giant personality when he fought Mayweather. But you get the gist of what I'm saying. And Francis Ngannou is not going to experience any of that. He's done. And that's just the sad case when you look at what he's doing. Right? Because these boxing matches, right? So here it is, right? So let's transition to this idea. Let's talk about Francis Ngannou, and let's talk about the fight that he had with Tyson Fury. That was a very misleading fight. And what I say by that is, that was a very misleading fight because Tyson Fury didn't know how good of a boxer Francis Ngannou was. So Tyson Fury had to cautiously not fight Francis Ngannou like he's a boxer, if that makes any sense. And I'm going to try to explain this. And I'm going to try to kind of, draw, kind of paint this picture of why Tyson Fury, if he fought him 5 more times, he's knocking him out in the first 5 rounds 5 more times. There is no value in a rematch. Tyson Fury still needs to fight Anthony Joshua. Tyson Fury still needs to fight, there's other fighters to fight that before you fight Francis Ngannou again. Francis Ngannou, whoever he fights, it's gonna be worse. And what I'm saying by that is now you have tape on what he actually can do. And if you really think about this, right, if you look at the way that Francis Ngannou was fighting, was boxing, was throwing blows, he was returning his punches, he looked a lot like Logan Paul and Jake Paul. They're quality people. I'm not taking anything away from them. They're brave for getting in there. But you look at the hesitancy, and you look at the way that they're fighting, they're not capitalizing on obvious mistakes that their opponents are making. And what I mean by that is, when you see Canelo fight, Triple G, they're so precise, they're so aggressive, they're so in tune to their craft that anytime anybody messes up, they're pulling the trigger and they're responding. The counter punching is on point. The defense is on point. They know how to set up these punches, and they're throwing the punches. They're jumping right in there because they've done it hundreds and hundreds of times. But the problem with these guys that only have 1 or 2 fights, even the Conor McGregor was like that too. Quality, entertaining fights, prize fights, but not technically sound, and the technicality of the fighter is what is going to make you want to watch again, right? The Jake Pauls, the Logan Pauls, yeah, they're entertaining people, They're entertainers for sure. You can't take nothing away from them. And if you do, you're mistaken, right? And they have brought a lot of attention to the world of boxing. This is true, 100%. However, if you want to see people, if you want people to fight, if you want to be able to get all that, if you want to be able to have people come back, I said that way too many ways. The returning watcher has to see that you're technically sound and you have kind of knowledge of the game. You're not going to get tricked by the easy things. So then what happens is, that when you look at, I don't know why somebody is parking behind me. When you look at like the way that everything works is, you put yourself in this position where, you put yourself in this position as a prize fighter. It's weird that somebody's behind me. Anyways, so you look at, Francis Ngannou. He's going to have this issue. These guys are not into having warm-up fights because they sign contracts for a number of fights. And so they want to make every single fight count. And I don't blame them at all. But the way that it used to be, the way that they used to build up these fighters' careers is they would put themselves in a position where every so often you would have people sorry about that. You would have them fight these up and comer people, and the zero defeat records were really for people that you saw their potential at the beginning. Everybody wants to have that zero loss record, so nobody wants to take a warm up fight. Nobody wants to become the punching bag, but those people existed, and everything was the way it was, right? Obviously, those people that were in the warm up fights, they didn't make as much money, but they had an opportunity. Everybody has an opportunity in boxing. When you get in the ring, anything can happen. That's the beautiful part of it right now. Obviously, if you have a super seasoned person, like say like a Mike Tyson in his prime, and you're a warm-up fight, you probably don't have no chance. But, Tyson Fury has fought a couple of warm-up fights lately, right? Not all of his fights been high caliber people. And if we're being honest, Francis Ngannou was a warm-up fight for him to unify all the belts. Nobody wants to say that, but Francis Ngannou was a warm-up fight. And how else can you look at it, right? The only reason why Francis Ngannou was able to knock down Tyson Fury, the only reason why Francis Ngannou was able to last that many rounds, the only reason why Francis Ngannou had a chance is because of the fact that Tyson Fury, the smart boxer that he is, the prize-fighting champion with wisdom, he knew that this guy who has no experience in boxing officially could throw a punch and land it correctly and knock people out. He had that ability. He wasn't timid about that. So with Tyson Fury, if you look at the way that he fought him with kid gloves on purpose because he didn't give Francis Ngannou an opportunity to go wild. See, Tyson Fury did something that a lot of people don't ever talk about, is he actually controlled the pacing of that fight, because he could have ramped it up. He could have got Francis Ngannou riled up. He could have got him fired up to do this and do this and do that, and to throw more punches and to do more stuff. The problem that happened is Tyson Fury, he knew that if he lets Francis Ngannou go wild, Francis Ngannou is big enough and strong enough to get lucky. He got lucky and knocked him down once. When he got lucky, and he was lucky, and he could get lucky and win that by accident, essentially, right? So Tyson Fury, like any smart prize fighter, Tyson Fury is an amazing fighter. He may go down as a top heavyweight of all time. If he beats Usyk in this upcoming fight and he unifies the belts, it's going to be hard to disagree with the argument that he's beaten every single person. Now he's going to fight Joshua. Joshua is kind of on the downslide. Wilder's already fought him too many times. There's really not a whole bunch of heavyweights out there. Tyson Fury might retire after he beats Usyk, because who else is there really? John Jones, maybe. If you look at, let me tell you something right now, okay? If Tyson Fury, and we're all over the place, but this is all boxing, okay? The majority of this thing is boxing here. And so, because we're already 15 minutes in, we're already 15 minutes deep, and we only talked a little bit about the NBA. But anyways, if Tyson Fury beats Usyk and he unifies all the belts, and John Jones gets healthy and he gets the heavyweight title, right? That co-promoted fight would be giant, would be humongous, would be totally interesting. That could be a fight that you could do at the Sphere. If John Jones gets healthy, he is the current heavyweight champion in the UFC. He has not defended his belt, right? To solidify your championship, you should be able to defend your belt at least once. Now, John Jones is a perennial champ. Now, he got hurt, so maybe the belt's going to go somewhere else. And in turn, because of these fighters, they fight once a year. If you get hurt one time, you lose the belt. Usually, if you're an active UFC fighter and you fight 3 times a year, if you can stay healthy, then you can pull out a fight and still be the champion. Nowadays, because they fight twice a year, maybe once a year, the minute that you get injured is you are losing your belt. So it's kind of like, it kind of sucks, right? Because John Jones really didn't get defeated. He got hurt. Some kind of injury he has. But anyways, so that's kind of um, the future for, I think, Tyson Fury, because he beat Francis Ngannou. He gave the UFC fighter or MMA fighter a chance. He's going to fight Usyk. Now, Usyk and him, I suspect that there's going to be a knockout in that fight, because Tyson Fury is fighting a traditional boxer now. Now, Usyk has different attributes than Francis Ngannou, but it's not going to be the same kind of fight. It is 100% not going to be the same kind of fight. And so when you look at that kind of dynamic, when you look at all the stuff that's going on in boxing, it's very interesting at the heavyweight, but this bleed over with the UFC, provided that the fighters make all the money, everybody gets their cut that's involved in the fight game. You have to, you should be putting these people together. John Jones versus Tyson Fury, humongously interesting fight, right? In boxing, it's not going to be MMA because there'd be no chance, but I'd pay to see that. I'd pay to see that, right? Who is Francis Ngannou going to fight? I'm not going to pay to see anybody that he fights unless it's a John Jones, unless it's a Tyson Fury again. I'm not going to pay to see anybody that he's fighting, and I think he's realizing this, that he backed himself into a corner. This one payday is probably going to set him up for life, because anything moving forward, I don't think they're going to be interesting fights, and he's not young. I think if Francis Ngannou is 37 or 36, he's an old man already in terms of MMA fighting. Now, heavyweight fighters can go to about 45 years old, 40, 45 years old. He's got about if he stays healthy, he's got 4 years in him left, max. And the time is ticking. He should be fighting twice a year. If I was him, I would fight twice a year, and I would try to keep myself active, and I would try to keep doing my thing and get those big fights, because eventually it'll surface. Eventually you'll have some heavyweights, but where he goes now, that's a huge question, and I think he didn't think that far. I think his people only thought about the Tyson Fury fight. Where I think they made the mistake is, I think they could have partnered with the UFC, and then the next fight could have been John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. John Jones versus, well, not Usyk, because Usyk's not going to fight him, but you know, like I said, Francis kind of painted himself into a corner, right? Tyson Fury is going to do Tyson Fury things. He's still the champ. He's still undefeated. He has the Usyk fight already lined up. How disrespectful is that, right? So Francis Ngannou not liking the idea that he was a warm-up fight, even though he got paid a ton of money. So that was probably the richest. That was probably the most lucrative. Here we go, right? The most lucrative, and some of this stuff is on the fly. So some of this stuff is not calculated, so to say, right? So one of the most lucrative boxing. It's one of the most lucrative warm-up fights of all time. That's what it was. One of the most lucrative boxing warm-up fights of all time, because really, Francis Ngannou was not thinking about the idea that, he is going to be, he was not thinking further than this fight. And maybe this fight made him enough money where he can quit. Maybe this fight made him enough money where he can retire. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe that's what happened 100%. He can retire. He can put himself in a good position where this is really the only fight he wanted. Maybe that's the only fight that he wanted. That's very possible that that's the only fight that he wanted. And if that's true, then, it is what it is at that point, right? So, okay, there it is. His career is going to stall out. Now, in the UFC, the fight with him and John Jones would have been big and giant. It would have been amazing. It would have been something to talk about, right? And that, I don't know if he would have made the same amount of money. I don't know. But he would have been on the umbrella of the UFC, and he could have continued because the UFC is expanding. The UFC, if he could have been part of that connection, look at Daniel Cormier and his personality and what he brings to the table. Daniel Cormier has not fought in a while now, and he is still involved with the UFC. He's still making a paycheck. He's still doing his thing. Now, every UFC fighter can't do that, but Francis Ngannou has a pretty good personality where he could have been involved in other aspects of fighting for the UFC. They could have found a show for him. They could have put, like, what if he would have looked for African fighters, him and a couple of the other UFC champions with African heritage or African descent, African blood in them. They could have made a show where they could have looked for talent out there. That would have been an amazing show. A lot of people would have tuned into that, and it would have been very interesting, and you could have really expanded the UFC that way. And that comes with the paycheck every single week. That comes with money. That comes with, being on a show, getting all that experience, the notoriety. Now, this one fight deal that maybe made him $25 million, he could have had a 15-year career beyond fighting. This might be the most lucrative fight he'll ever have. I don't see any of the fights that are interesting that people are willing to take because he lost to Tyson Fury. And if Usyk beats Tyson Fury, then maybe there's a fight there. Maybe there's a fight there. I don't know. I don't know if there's a fight there, right? But Usyk would probably be game for another warm-up fight. Francis Ngannou is a warm-up fighter at best. At best. And I know people are going to come for me and be like, you're wrong, Reuben, 100%. And that's what the title of this episode is going to be. Former UFC champion Francis Ngannou is a warm-up fighter. He's a warm-up fighter. He's a warm-up fighter. Former UFC champ Francis Ngannou is a warm-up fighter. Because that's what he kind of represented to Francis Ngannou. To Tyson Fury. And Tyson Fury, right, treated it as such. We didn't see the writing on the wall. When he signed the contract with Usyk, before he even fought Francis Ngannou, that told you that that's the way everybody was looking at it. That even told me, or it made me think that is even the way that Francis Ngannou knew that this was going to go down. Right? I think they understood all that stuff. But it was a good show. You put up a good show. You don't talk about that until it's too late. Teddy Atlas, all these people, nobody acknowledged all this stuff. That was a warm-up fight. Tyson Fury was smart. He played that game calculated. He gave Francis Ngannou his respect. And by giving him his respect, he got the victory. Well, he got knocked down. That's irrelevant, man. Francis Ngannou has knockout power. He's a big dude, big, strong guy. He wasn't big and strong enough to beat Tyson Fury. He had a chance. I don't think anybody thought that was actually ever going to happen. So that was that, right? So you move on from that, and you keep it moving. And so I thought that was interesting. Heavyweight boxing, it has all these weird quirks to it that if you follow along with it, then you can keep up with it. But it's like what's going on? You kind of discombobulate the casual audience. The loyalists, they like to see all this stuff, right? They're enjoying seeing all this stuff. But the casual people, you can't latch on to it. Because Conor McGregor did it with Floyd Mayweather, it was interesting. But I think Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, they have crazy, outrageous personalities. Like, they're prize fighters to the 10th degree. And there was no if, and, or buts about it. That was going to be an entertaining fight. Floyd Mayweather didn't stand any chance of losing that fight against Conor McGregor. None. If Mayweather was in the hunt to keep fighting, that would have been his warm-up fight. They wouldn't have framed it that. They wouldn't have talked about it like that. They wouldn't even have looked at it like that. But they would have framed it like it was a warm-up fight. And that's the difference, right? That's fine. I tuned in. I tuned into the Ngannou fight because I didn't realize all this till later. Oh, he's already fighting Usyk, so it's already been figured out. It's already been figured out. No big deal. So that was the thing about these boxing matches, right? And then we're gonna end this, right? I have 4 or 5 minutes left. We're gonna end this with Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia is on the come up, right? He took the big loss versus Tank Davis and so forth and so on. And Ryan Garcia's been dealing with a whole bunch of stuff, man. He's kind of had a raw deal, and to put it in a nutshell for this guy, he just needs to settle down, get with get a new crew. And I don't think it's a bad idea that he's dealing with Oscar De La Hoya. If I'm being honest, I think Oscar De La Hoya is good for him. Because Oscar De La Hoya is a tough character. He's in the business. He's no nonsense. And you got to be sharp to deal with him. He's not just going to hand you the keys to everything. He's not going to give you what you want. I like that about Oscar De La Hoya. He's a little ruthless. I like that about him. He's a prize fighter. And I think he revs his life, or he redlines his life. So you can't poo-poo Oscar De La Hoya for being who he is. And he's trying to develop Ryan Garcia into this champion, but it's hard because Ryan Garcia has 100 people that are in his ear trying to convince him that what he's doing is right or wrong or whatever the deal is with this. And all he has to do is keep going and fight another fight. And he got a fight under his belt and he beat the guy. Ryan Garcia is a prize fighter. He's very charismatic, good-looking kid. I mean, one of the best looking kids out there. He's a model, right? He's got everything. He just needs to keep it together. His tribe or his circle of people, he needs to hope that he gets a strong circle of people, because I don't think he came from the world of boxing in the traditional sense. I want to say that he came from Victorville, and I don't know how much of a pedigree. What are we at? Are we almost at 30 minutes? Yeah. And so Ryan Garcia just needs to keep going. He's a great example of it. Now he's got crazy punching speed. He can knock out people. He's got the talents. He's got the meats. He's got the punching. He can do whatever he needs to do to win. He's a quality fighter. Tank Davis is amazing too, though. Tank Davis is top of the food chain. So you can't get disappointed in yourself because you lost to a guy that probably not going to lose to anybody. Tank Davis probably going to go undefeated his whole career if he just keeps it together. If he keeps fighting, he stays injury free, and the CTE bug doesn't bite him real bad, Tank Davis can go undefeated in his career. He can go 45-0 because he's not going to fight every year. So he only got 5 or 6 more fights in him. That's it. He ain't going to fight that much longer. But Ryan Garcia is a young man. He's got it all together. I think he needs to stick to Oscar De La Hoya and ride that train out and embrace that adventure, that trials and tribulations, and keep active, keep fighting, keep pushing, keep moving. He fought a lower caliber fighter for sure in his last fight. He needs to keep doing those until you bring out the champs, because Ryan Garcia has a lot of appeal. He has the audience. You just got to win some fights so you can get it there. That's all you got to do. You just got to get it there. And I think it looks like that's what he's doing. So kudos to him. And, as he fights the bigger fights now, because he's got to work his way up, right? Because he fell down. He took some time off. He didn't jump back on the horse right away. He took some time off and he's building himself back up. And I think he's going to do a great job in building himself back up and getting to that championship, being a champion. And then calling the shots on the fights and having his team dictate. He started making $15, $20 million a fight, $25, $30 million a fight. Then you fight twice a year and you make a ton of money. And, and you can retire at 40, 35 and not take a lot of punishment. Ryan Garcia has he's a quality fighter. The prize fighter, he has all that. He just needs his team to be consistent. And it looks like he's got a decent team. We'll wait and see about 3 more fights in. But if he can get a solid team behind him, and if he can keep that foundation with Oscar De La Hoya, I think he's going to be all right. I think it's going to be good. But anyways, what are your guys' takes on the world of boxing? I just touched on a couple of issues.